Hello and welcome. I'm Jennifer Shlomovich, and I help busy women simplify plant based living so they can improve their health, save time, and feel supported even if their family isn't on board. Here on the Confident Vegan channel, you'll find insightful interviews with inspiring vegans, practical tips for plant based living, and empowering conversations about what it really means to live in alignment with your values. I am also the co host of that vegan morning show with Kimberly Winters of the Did You Bring the Hummus podcast. You can start your day the vegan way and watch us live every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern on YouTube at That Vegan Morning Show. Today, my special guest is Dawn Hutchins, who is the Director of Plant Based Nutrition at Central Garden and Pet. She holds certificates in plant based nutrition and nutritional therapy with a focus on epigenetics. And she is also a trained plant based chef. Dawn is the founder of VegeCooking, where she teaches moms and families how to cook plant based meals that support weight loss, vitality, and long term health. Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
I'm really happy to have you here. We connected, I think, a few weeks ago now. And yeah, I'm really excited to have you on to talk about a subject I'm very passionate about, which is whole food, plant-based, right? Because that I feel like is the fundamentals for all health, right? Like,
Yes.
um, you know, no, yes, some health issues are hard to prevent. Sometimes, things
hmm
do happen, but
hmm
eating a healthy diet impacts how well you can get through those types of situations as well. So we'll dive into all of that, but in a moment. But first, I always ask my guests, what is your vegan story?
Oh, that's such a good question. Um, so I always have loved animals. I was, interestingly though, a little misguided when I was a kid because I think like a lot of families, they're like, oh, you should go into 4-H and you should, you could become a vet. None of those things necessarily are vegan supportive. However, I knew I loved animals. My first volunteer work was always at humane societies. So all of my volunteer work, my whole life, has always been working with animals. And so I think I knew I had that love of animals, but I don't even know that I had heard of veganism. It was in 2010 when I had been looking for different ways to lose weight initially. So I had tried every different diet on the planet, including Atkins, which I'm probably dating myself, which is now kind of more like a keto style diet. I had tried the zone diet. I had tried, I don't know, all these different diets. And I remember overhearing about a couple at my yoga studio that said, don't read this book because you'll never want to eat an animal food again. And I knew I loved animals. I didn't know anything about animal agriculture really yet, but I was like, for some reason that caught my ear because even though at that time I was eating ungodly amounts of cheese and dairy and all different kinds of animal foods. And I felt horrible. I had insomnia, my hair was falling out, I was depressed, I was 15 pounds overweight. And so I went out and got that book. That book was called The China Study. So, not necessarily about veganism, but really about how the fact that you don't need animal foods for protein and calcium. That was what my fear was, that you have to have animal foods for protein and calcium. So that gave me the permission to release the need for animals for those um, kind of macronutrients and minerals. And I went plant-based almost overnight. And so that kind of led me to being open to exploring more about animal agriculture, where I really learned more about veganism and what happens to animals that go through factory farms. And so I was on a plant-based journey as well for health. And then I really quickly adopted veganism as a lifestyle for the animals. And so it really felt so good to be in alignment with my values as an animal lover. And I also lost the weight and then my hair started growing back in and I wasn't depressed anymore, probably because it does feel really good to live in alignment with your values. Like it really made, even though it's not an easy thing to do in our culture, it does make you feel so good. So as I started adding more plant foods, I lost 15 pounds. This was, like I said, in 2010, and I've never had to really diet again. And my skin looked better. Any acne I had cleared up. My nails are growing longer. So it is really um, it's a cool thing to do the whole food plant-based along with that vegan lifestyle because I think a lot of people mix up the term vegan and plant-based. And we can talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but I just think they go so amazingly hand in hand for sticking with veganism long term.
I agree with you 100%. And I can relate so much to your story because for me, I had no intention of being vegan. I never thought I would be vegan. I remember in high school, someone in one of my classes talking about being vegan, and I thought, oh, why would anyone want to do that? Right? Sounds so difficult. Um, fast forward. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
have struggled with rosacea and eczema.
Hmm.
And I was reading about how different foods can trigger those symptoms. And
Hmm.
so I was reading about dairy as one of them. And so I did an experiment giving up dairy for 30 days. And what I realized was dairy was making me feel like crap in ways I didn't even realize it was making me feel.
Isn't it so interesting? It's almost once you start feeling better and then you eat a little bit of it, then you realize how crappy it was making you feel.
Yeah, because, growing up, I didn't grow up vegan.
Right.
Standard
Yeah.
American diet,
Yeah.
right? So that's all I knew. And I used to struggle with eczema as a kid all the time, right? And so my skin felt better. I felt better. My sinuses were better. Like I wasn't having all
Yes.
this like gross phlegm and all these
Yep.
things with my
Yep.
sinuses. And I've talked to so many other people who've had the same reaction, the same experience. So during that time, I was looking up dairy-free recipes on Pinterest and just on Google, and a lot of vegan recipes are coming up. And I'm like, wow, this stuff looks really good. It looks better than the
Yeah.
stuff that I make. And from there, I discovered Forks Over Knives, which
Oh,
shows whole
yeah.
food, plant-based. It was
Yes.
based on the China study and all of that important information that came up that was discovered about the truth about our food industry, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And my mother died of a heart attack in 2007, and I wanted to take better care of my health. There's also, there was heart disease and diabetes in my family, and I wanted to start eating better because I didn't want to
Mhm.
develop these issues down the line. Like my
Yeah.
numbers have tiptoed into areas where like not major and the doctors weren't worried, but the fact that they're tiptoed was enough for me to be like, you know what, I need to.
Right. That was the time to make the change, not after it was too late.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I you didn't, so it started off with the health. And
Hmm.
when I
Yeah.
went back to dairy, I realized, ugh. And
Yeah. I feel
I-
so gross. Yeah.
yeah, and then I just started buying vegan cookbooks and making more vegan food. And then I started reading and learning about the animal agriculture stuff, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
watched some documentaries and your heart starts to hurt, right? Because I'm also
Oh,
an
for
animal
sure.
lover. Like
Right.
I thought I wanted to either be a vet when I was little, but then I didn't want
Yep.
to do that anymore. And then at one point in like ninth grade, I thought maybe I wanted to be a zoologist, right? So I
Yep.
always had this like draw for animals.
Yeah.
Um, didn't do anything with animals in my career, but now I am, I guess, in a different way. And so,
And this is the same thing with my advocacy as well, which I think we've talked about this, but yeah, this is saving animals in a different way.
yeah, 100%. Like sometimes we just don't know the way, the form of something,
Mhm.
right? We just
Mhm.
know that it's there in our hearts. And so, yeah, I wanted to be vegan, but then I knew my family wouldn't want to be vegan. And so I
Mhm.
had to figure that all out until I had to prioritize my own values and feeling in alignment. And yeah, there's something about living in that alignment that
Mhm.
gives you this genuine happiness you didn't even realize
So
you
true.
were missing or what it was. Like
Yeah.
you knew that there was something off, but you didn't realize, right? We chase it from other things.
Yep.
And when you start living in alignment, you realize how being out of alignment was really the
Mhm.
foundation of that unhappiness.
Mhm. I totally agree. And I think so many of us arrive at that are vegan and also whole food plant-based arrive in a similar place because we have had family history of heart disease. Because I mean, I think we talked about I lost my dad in 2013 on the day
Mhm.
he decided to retire. And he rode his bike up to the pool to swim laps and lift weights on his lunch break and had a massive heart attack in the pool and what they could not revive him. And here he never got to enjoy his retirement. And he had been eating kind of a paleo style diet. Like growing up,
Mhm.
it was a little more, I think for a while he was vegetarian. I knew what vegetarian was. And then he did eat some chicken and fish later on. So that's how I grew up. So I at least knew that I didn't really want to eat a lot of cow or pig. But I think that then seeing how that impacted him later in life, even when outwardly he was in amazing shape, and just the fact that he never got to enjoy his retirement was horrible. So I was like, I don't want that to happen to me. And now I also see the impact of how good eating whole food plant-based is for longevity and for your brain health long term, especially as now I've been caring for my mom with MS and since 2013, and it really is important to take care of your health just so you can continue to be self-sufficient long term. And like you said, there are going to be things that come up that are out of your control no matter what dietary pattern you follow, but at least this really gives you a huge leg up when it comes to being self-sufficient and living with a long health span, not just lifespan.
Yeah, 100%. And the other
Mhm.
thing too is like one of the things I've been recently listening to the audiobook of Dr. Greger's How Not to Die.
Oh, yeah.
And such a great book.
Yes.
And it's a frightening book too, because of just like when listening to this, like it's like I want to like shout it from the rooftop. I want to give like everybody I know a copy. I'm probably am gonna like give people a bunch of copies during the holidays.
Yeah, that's a great
They
idea.
might hate me for it, but they might love me for it later. Um,
Right.
but the thing is, like it goes beyond the like the fat in the animal, right?
Yeah.
There's all of the antibiotics and pesticides and all of the things that get stored in the animal tissue, right? That, you
Mhm.
know, back in the day when this was how people ate, not that I'm saying it was healthy then, but like food, even gluten impacts us differently here in the
Yeah.
US than in Europe. I've heard other people say they can't eat gluten in the US, but when they go to Europe, they can eat gluten, right? So,
Yeah.
because of all of these things that we do to our food system,
Mhm.
um, separate from just all the horrors of the suffering that the animals go through. There is this division, and I'm glad you mentioned it, and we'll get to it in a minute because I think there is a lot of confusion between plant-based and vegan. And there
Yes.
sometimes can be a lot of animosity in the vegan community because it's like someone's plant-based, oh, but you're not vegan, or you can be
Right.
both. You can also be both. Like, right, you and
Right.
I
Yeah.
found we took the same path to veganism, but
Mhm.
the vegan part, the commitment to the ethics, And that's the big difference, right? Like
Yes.
plant-based, and listen, they're both good. I don't shame people for being plant-based because it's all impactful, right?
Right, exactly.
If
That's definitely the bottom line is
right,
that whatever their reasons are, I don't really care. It's the fact that if you're eating more plant foods, it's going to be displacing animal foods, and that's fantastic.
exactly. Same. Like that's how I
Yeah.
feel too. And yeah, look, it took me 2 years to commit to being
Hmm.
vegan.
Hmm.
So I understand how it can be challenging. But I took I considered myself an aspiring vegan.
Yeah,
And
I like that.
and yeah, I was afraid about how other people would judge me, and which allowed me to create this platform to help people who do feel alone, who
Yes,
want to either be plant-based or vegan or just make changes in their lives, but they're afraid of how other people are going to judge them, and because it can feel alienating at times.
very
So
much.
it's so important, to show people how they can do these things. So I want to circle over to the work that you do. So how
Mhm.
did you create your business and create the mission that you're now doing?
So I was working in corporate finance for about 13 years, and I knew it was not what I wanted to be doing. I was sitting in a cubicle. We were leasing copiers to businesses, and I'm like, is this really going to be my life's work? It's leasing copiers. I am sitting in a cubicle for 40 hours a week, and that's my life's mission. So I was like, this just doesn't. And then after my dad passed away, on the day he was going to retire, I'm like, and the number of people that I saw that passed away before they even made it to retirement, I was like, oh, this isn't going to happen. So after dad passed away, I was like, I am making a career change. And I had already read the China study, gotten a certificate in plant based nutrition. I had been trying to promote this brand of chia. I was like trying all these different things to try to transition and have a diversified source of income. But once my dad passed away, I was like, I'm done. I had already been kind of establishing a blog and a following, and that I transitioned into the company that I had started a little bit later. But I left my job, started consulting for a natural food store, a local natural food store, and I did all their events. And it was real flexible. I was able to work part time. So that was fantastic. And then I was doing a bunch of cooking classes for that natural food store. And my daughter's elementary school principal was like, hey, would you be interested in doing some cooking classes for kids? Which I had never had experience working with kids. So that was a whole other story. Teachers are very gifted people, and you have to understand classroom management, I realized later. So, but the kids loved it. So I did sort of a trial plant-based cooking classes, and we did not use the word vegan because in this area that I live in, it is not, I live in the Southeast and it is not vegan supportive by any means.
Hmm.
So, but nobody could argue that kids should be eating more vegetables. So that was how I approached it, and the kids loved it. So they all got to take a turn. And then we had parents asking for, well, would we do this after school? So then I created an after school enrichment program.
Hmm.
So that was in 2014. And so I grew that. I was in my school system in the local area. The kids were loving it. I started a licensing program, so still have a licensee in Camden County, Georgia, that covers a bunch of counties, and she is doing amazing work. Well, my school district during the pandemic shut down, so I went from having 11 locations to 0 locations in no time flat. And then I said, well, now what am I going to do? So I went from working with hundreds of children, which was really cool, to having to shift into looking for something within my niche. And I stumbled across my friend Heather Borders, who's a plant-based registered dietitian, was working for this renowned Dr. Clapper, and he has a background in cardiology. And she was basically manning his email box and said, "Hey, I intercepted this email that said they need a director of plant-based nutrition for this company based on Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn's teaching." And he's another very renowned cardiologist that works with the Cleveland Clinic and has found that he's been able to prevent and reverse many cases of even extreme heart disease. So I was hired to either create a wellness program for 7,000 people based on Dr. Esselstyn's teachings, which are pretty strict, or find something that existed. So I interviewed for that. I was hired, and then I said, okay, now I got to see if something out there already exists. So I spent about a year looking around, testing some different platforms, and then I stumbled across the Plant Strong program, which is Rip Esselstyn, who is Dr. Esselstyn's son.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been teaching firemen plant-based eating. So they had amazing results in the fire station he was working with, and he was kind of spreading his message based on his dad's teachings, but they weren't quite as strict, which was fantastic. So Plant Strong had started doing corporate wellness programs for Whole Foods, and they had wanted to take their corporate wellness program onto a virtual setting. So that's what I have been doing for our 7,000 employees plus their 7,000 dependents, is helping the Plant Strong by Metabite program. And Metabite is the app platform that we're using to spread the curriculum virtually across all of our locations in the United States. And so we are currently in the fourth cohort. So we have people apply, they get access to the app with all this curriculum. They get 12 weeks of coaching with registered dietitians, plant-based registered dietitians. So they get a weekly meeting. And then when they graduate, I support all the alumni. And so it has been the most rewarding, incredible experience to see people's health change in 12 weeks. And we do blood tests before and after. So we have all the biomarker numbers. And in fact, one of our participants, the alumni, recently said that she had an A1C of over 7 when she started the program, and now it's 5.2 a year later. So
Wow.
A1C is an indication of type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, and she normalized it within a year. So it was a 12-week program, but then we've also been tracking how they're doing over time. So not only are they getting really amazing results in the 12 weeks, then they are continuing on with it and continuing on the journey and continuing to see more results. So we've seen a bunch of people reduce their meds or get off meds or just and have kind of those more subjective, like I'm sleeping better, my mood's better, I have more energy. And the fact that people have told me it's fun has been really cool because they have the support of all the online participants. So even if their family is not supportive at home, they have the support of online participants. So we don't talk a lot about the animal aspect, but my hope is always that they know that I'm vegan, they know that the coaches are vegan as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we are open about it, but we're also very non-judgmental. And that has been a theme that has been repeated over and over by graduates, that I felt so supported and not judged. And I'm eating essentially way more plant foods, but also way less animal foods. So
Yeah.
even though they might not be 100% whole food plant based, some of the participants are also connecting the vegan aspect of I don't want to necessarily participate in the level of cruelty of animal agriculture. So it's kind of similar to me, led them to that journey of their eyes being opened because now if you're not really participating in it as much, it's a little easier to look at it. Where if you're heavily involved in just eating a lot of animal foods, you don't even want to see it. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to see it. You
Mm-hmm.
don't want to acknowledge the level of suffering at all. So, this has been kind of a cool way to open people's eyes without them feeling bad or judged.
That's really wonderful. I love how your story, I mean, I'm sorry about your dad. It's tough, losing a parent like that.
Yes.
What I love is how you went on this journey. It started off with small steps, and then one opportunity led you to another opportunity, led you to another
Yes.
opportunity, to another
Yes.
opportunity, and now here you are.
Yes.
And you're having this impact on helping so many other people not have to endure the same type of tragedy that you had to experience
Yes.
with your
And that's
dad.
one of my whys for sure.
Yeah. And that,
Mhm.
yeah, and that's a big part of my mission with the work. Like I focus on two things: supporting vegans, but also helping women improve their health by eating more plants
Mhm.
because of what happened to my mom, right? And I share about my veganism, not forcing it on people, but
Mhm.
in hopes, look, I started off just caring about health, and there's no shame in that, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of cognitive dissonance
Yes.
because, look, we don't have to look at how our food is there, right? Again,
Right.
we just grow up going to the grocery store and you get this package of meat.
Yep.
You don't have to think too much about what it is, but when you start thinking about it, and yeah, some people don't want to think about it, right? Because the truth can
Mhm.
be very inconvenient and upsetting.
Right.
There's a lot of just
Yeah.
things, the animal agriculture is a whole other conversation in itself. And, again, start with I feel like a lot of people, when they start with their health, they're going
Mhm.
to get exposed more to the information and the other truth out there. And, hopefully we'll go on a journey of self-discovery on, and,
Yes.
with all of that. Um, but it's all good, like we were talking about before, because there's a reduction of of a reduction of animal products. Like
Yeah, exactly.
my husband's not vegan,
Mhm.
but we do have some non-vegan things. I don't make it. And in the beginning, our kids were younger and I was the cook. So when I first went vegan, I still made non-vegan food for my family. But then when
Mhm.
we became
Mhm.
empty nesters, I told my husband, I'm like, if you want meat or some fish, you can make it yourself.
Yeah, that's basically what I've resorted to. And my daughter's still in the house, but speaking of the eczema, I mean, from the time she was little, she had this bloody eczema, like her eyelids would bleed and like the inside of her
Oh, wow.
would bleed. It was horrible. And she kept getting these chronic ear infections. And we finally, and her regular doctors had been continuing to put her on antibiotics and steroids that weren't approved for children her age. But
Oh my
I
gosh.
was so miserable that I didn't know what to do, and her pediatricians kept telling me to do this. So finally, when I was consulting at that naturopathic food or that natural food store, there was a doctor that came in that was a naturopathic doctor, and I had asked somebody who that was, and they were like, "Oh, that's Dr. Rapoli." And so I had talked to him about Gabby, and I thought he only saw older people, but he's like, "I've got a theory about what it could be. Could you just bring her in?" Because she also had like all these weird food allergies and stuff. She had been diagnosed with eggs, dairy, tree nuts, peanuts, soy, whitefish, like all these
Wow.
different allergies. So I was like, what the hell am I going to feed her? And he's like, I have a theory about what it is. And so I brought her into him. He's like, what I want you to do is start her on, and she was about 5 years old, as close to a whole food plant-based diet as possible. For adults, he does a juicing protocol and then gets people back onto, you know, his his whole food plant-based dietary protocols. But he's like, really get her as close as you can as whole food plant-based, and then really eliminate the dairy and the wheat. And
Mm-hmm.
I am telling you, she had an ear infection. We were going on the third set of ear tubes, and I did that very quickly. I changed her diet. I had somebody at the natural food store walk me around and show me the stuff that I could feed her. And it was like night and day. Her ear infection went away. She ha- Now she's 17. I think she maybe had like one ear infection since then because sometimes
Wow.
she'll eat a little bit of dairy and wheat. And so it cleared up the eczema, cleared up the ear infections. I think she's been on one round of antibiotics the whole time. So from 5 to 17 now, never had to get that third set of ear tubes. And in fact, she has hearing damage from the ear tubes.
Oh,
I
wow.
remember we were going to get that second set removed, and the pediatric ENT was like, "We need to get the third set of ear tubes in." And I was like, "Well, I've been changing her diet because she was diagnosed with, for all the food allergies and all this stuff, with leaky gut." Well, that wasn't a diagnosed thing back then. So the
Right.
naturopathic doctor diagnosed her with leaky gut. And he was like, "And what is leaky gut?" All condescending.
Mm.
And sure enough, though, that naturopathic doctor was right. It changed almost overnight. The ear infection went away, and she's very rarely been sick since. I mean, she might get a cold every now and then, but it has been incredible. I mean, I never had to buy another steroid cream.
Thank you
So
so
it was
much
amazing.
for sharing that story. I'm sorry you went through that, and I'm so happy that you were able to find, a better way, right? And
Yes.
I feel like there are more doctors out there now, I think, aware of this
Hmm.
stuff, but still not enough.
Yes.
And
And
I,
especially pediatricians.
right.
They are really terrified of leading with whole food plant-based. But if you do a well-planned whole food plant-based, same thing for adults. You're going to get everything you need. I mean, and you don't have to be 100%, but for her, we really did need to cut out dairy, and for now she can eat wheat, but um, yeah. And she can also eat soy. We eat a ton of soy in our house. So a lot of the food allergies, what we thought were food allergies, cleared up.
Yeah, the dairy, like I said, I felt a lot better, and
Mhm.
I feel like it's really poison. I
It
feel like
really is.
if there's one thing people can do today who are still eating dairy,
Mhm.
take a give it up for 30 days just to
Mhm.
see how you feel.
Mhm.
And, and then based on that, right?
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
just do
And
it. That's
there's
how
so
I start.
many alternatives. And I think what people don't realize, everyone's so afraid of soy because they're like, oh, the soy has, estrogens. The soy has plant estrogens, phytoestrogens. Dairy has mammalian estrogen because it's the breast milk of a cow, which
Yeah.
is much closer to our mammalian estrogen. So if we're worried about, man boobs and, breast cancer and things like that, we definitely should not be eating mammalian estrogen. And people will eat dairy all day long and then demonize soy foods.
Yeah.
So I think we need to get people less afraid of eating whole forms of soy foods, and really learn more about dairy. I think people, even I was working with a CSA farmer, and he decided to get a dairy cow, and they raised her from a baby, and he's like, well, I don't didn't understand, she never produced milk. And next thing I know, he had her slaughtered, and they sold pieces of her to the farm share participants. And I'm like,
Oh my God.
it you have to have her be pregnant and have a baby, and then she will have milk. But I think a lot of people just don't understand how that works. So it was really a sad and eye-opening experience of how much misinformation there is about dairy. I think the industry really does spread that misinformation that it's all happy cows and, you know, not the fact that they have to be impregnated and then the baby's taken away. People
And
just
then the
don't
babies are turned into veal, right?
feel,
Like,
people just don't know that. And it's so sad.
yeah, it's what you just said about that farmer and that cow is really heartbreaking.
It is
And
heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. That
and
cow acted like a dog, like
yeah,
a dog. It was heartbreaking. It still haunts me for sure. So, if we can get the word out there about how all dairy doesn't matter, organic, anything, it's all made the same way.
yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And again, it's when you realize, yeah, cows have to be forcibly impregnated and then their
Mm,
babies are taken away from them. The babies are at times can be turned into veal, right?
mhm.
Like this is just
I know.
the tragic thing. I feel like you should come back and we could have a
Yeah.
whole other conversation on that. Um, I appreciate you sharing all of this again. Thank you. And I'm glad that your daughter is doing much better. And yeah,
Oh,
there's,
great.
you know, that I just want to before we pivot from this, I just want to say, we have to be advocates for our own health. And I feel like there's a fine line of trusting doctors and not trusting doctors at the same
Mhm.
time, right?
Right.
Where there is, yes, there's 100% a place for medicine. There's a lot of advancements. And yeah, sometimes treatments are needed for things,
Yes.
100%.
Yes. I agree.
But
I do
also,
agree.
but also, doctors are not perfect and they don't
Right.
know everything. And a lot of them learned outdated information. And
Mhm.
so it's always good to get second opinions. It's always good to
Mhm.
try other things. Look, changing your diet to whole food, plant-based, if you're struggling with some kind of an ailment,
Mhm.
changing your diet to healthy eating doesn't really require
Right.
too
Right.
much. I mean, listen, any kind of diet change, if you have concerns, yes, go talk to your doctor about
Mm.
things if you have concerns for sure. But, starting with what you eat can
Yeah.
only help the situation. It shouldn't have the same kind of side effects as
Right.
switching to a medication, right? Just giving up
Yes.
dairy. And again,
Right.
you can still have all of your nutritional requirements met
Mhm.
on a plant-based diet. Um,
Yeah.
so I wanted to ask you, anyone watching who's interested in transitioning to a plant-based diet, what are some tips that
Mhm.
you have for someone who's curious and wants to just get started?
So I think that taking it slow, like you talked about, is probably the best way because with any new dietary pattern, there's always going to be a learning curve.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I've learned through facilitating this wellness program is that if you focus on adding foods in, your brain isn't going to have that same deprivation mechanism that is like, oh my gosh, you're cutting this out and you're cutting that out. And, I can do this for 12 weeks, but after that, then I'm done with the diet. So taking it slow, considering it a lifestyle instead of a diet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things that we talk about a lot is a lot of if you get books or you get influencers or whatever, they're like, do this, 6 months detox or, 6 week detox or 21 days or whatever. But we really need to be thinking about it as a lifestyle change and focusing on adding foods in. So, how we do it is the first 3 weeks, we add fruit and we everybody decides what their goal is for fruit. So it might be one fruit a day, it might be one fruit a week if you're terrified of eating fruit, which many people are. And so we focus on that, and then we're teaching. So then you might want to do some kind of learning and education. There's a really great, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has a really great free 21-day vegan program.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like about that is not that it's just 21 days and then you're done, it's that it's teaching you the curriculum. And then you could do like what we do, where we add fruit for 3 weeks. Then we continue adding fruit and also add vegetables. And everybody sets their own goal. It doesn't have to be what somebody else sets for them. Then we focus on adding whole grains. And then we focus on adding legumes. And by the end of the 12 weeks, as they've been learning the curriculum as well, and really focusing on adding, it just crowds out a lot of the animal foods on their plates. And so even if they're not giving up, they might want to eat McDonald's once a week, or they might want to, um, put Velveeta on their on their, English muffin or something. The fact that they're adding all these other foods in is really crowding a lot of the other stuff out, and they're really still seeing the benefits. Some people go all the way and see amazing benefits really quickly, and some people just are like, I don't ever want to do that. But so I think that slow learning curve, the slow progression, and really trying to learn as much as you can from credible sources, because your point about there is something to be said about a credentialed doctor and a credentialed registered dietitian. And that has also been trained in lifestyle medicine. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the 1-2 punch of understanding lifestyle and the impacts of not just food, and what you drink, but sleep, exercise, stress management, and then trying to slowly incorporate all of that. So those are kind of my tips for people is just like I said, taking it slow, adding the foods in and really focusing on those whole food plant-based, really try not to judge yourself. There are going to be slip ups and things that aren't in alignment with your health goals, but understanding how we talk to ourselves and not beating ourselves up. Especially women, we're really good at beating ourselves up, I will say.
Oh, yes.
Um, Understanding there will be times when you feel like you're backsliding or plateauing, and that is totally normal, but sticking with it. The only way to fail is if you give up. That's the same thing with exercise, same thing with anything. The only way to fail is if you give up completely. And so just always, even if you totally blow it on a cruise or something, just saying, okay, I'm going to get back to it and get back on the horse and keep going. And that's where I think a lot of people lose their momentum, because they're like, I wasn't vegan enough. I messed up. I went to a barbecue. So forget it. I can't do this. And the not giving up and just keeping going. And it can be tiny little steps over time. And just the learning is really key too. I always go back, what really helps me as well is rewatching some of the documentaries like Forks Over Knives, like you talked
Mm-hmm.
about, The Game Changers, What the Health. I think there's a Plant Powered People. There's so many amazing documentaries out there. So just watching all those as well.
Yeah, I love everything that you just said. Start smart and yeah, adding instead of taking away, right? All these other trendy diets, and I've done
Hmm.
some of them. I did Slim Fast a million years
Yeah.
ago in South
Weight
Beach,
Watchers,
South
all the
Beach, yeah,
things.
all of
Yeah.
those.
Hmm.
And yeah, you just feel miserable because you
Yeah.
feel like you've taken away things. And with whole food plant-based, you can eat a lot because you're eating a
A
lot of
lot.
unprocessed plants, right? And
Yes.
salads are not boring. I have learned how to make amazing salads, and your taste buds change as well. That's another thing
They
I wanted to add.
do.
When, everyone talks about vegan cheese not being great. Well, it's
Yes.
come a long way from what I
Yeah.
understand it used to be. So we live in a
Yes.
day and age where vegan cheese is a lot better. But
Yes.
also, I remember when I was trying to switch to it in the beginning, yeah, it tasted weird to me. But
Yeah.
then the longer I didn't have dairy, then my taste buds started to change towards the vegan cheese.
That
And
is so true.
so, like, I just wanted to throw that out there too, that as you were talking, I was thinking about that. Like, and you start to crave the healthier foods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And listen, like you said, if you have the fast food or you go on a cruise or a barbecue and go back to it, right? I
Mm-hmm.
always tell my clients progress over perfection, right?
Yes.
Sometimes
Yes.
when you're climbing that mountain, you got to stop and rest or you take a detour or whatever it is, but then you
Mm-hmm.
keep going.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll get there, and the more you take care of your body, the more decisions that you make that support your well-being,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to override the occasional mishaps, right?
Yes.
Because it's better than doing nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yeah.
you were, before not doing anything, right? At one point,
Right.
we weren't doing any of this. So,
Right. Exactly. That is so true. Or, I think that it there's so many dietary patterns that support this way of eating, but it doesn't have to be just this. It could be like a
Mhm.
Mediterranean, or it could be, so there are a lot of health promoting dietary patterns. They're all pretty much, I think, the consensus between food scientists and the majority of registered dietitians. There might be a very few outliers, are that a plant forward diet is really best for human health. So
Mhm.
yeah, just, being on that journey. And, when I read the China study, I did continue to eat seafood for a little while. And then finally I realized I cannot watch people fishing. And now there are more studies about how fish have emotions and can feel pain. And um, I didn't know any of that. All I knew was like I cannot watch somebody pulling a fish out. And then finally I was like, as much as I love seafood, this is not in alignment with my values. And so, but that took some time for me to have that realization and to pull that
Yeah.
out because, um, you know, I think some people are like, well, fish can be part of a healthy diet. It can be, but if you're also combining the ethics piece and the veganism, they suffer just like any other animal. So, but that, that can take time to get there. And
Mhm.
every little bit that you're eating a little less is so beneficial for the animals.
100%. And fish was the last thing that went for me. Like when I was like vegetarian, pescatarian a bit, just dabbling on
Mhm.
and off for a
Yeah.
while, and then I went vegan and was vegan for a few months, and I was having some health stuff because it might take a moment to kind of figure out the right balance for you.
Yes.
And a doctor
Yes.
told me that I should be eating fish, so I went back to
Mhm.
fish,
Mhm.
and then a couple months later, I was like eating sushi with my husband, and I just felt, oh my God, I can't. Like I felt like this
Yeah.
aversion. Like I finished eating it, but I realized, like, I don't know, something in me shifted where I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but if you gradually just listen to your body and you make the changes so that it doesn't feel, again, it's sustainable change, right? And when
Mhm.
you do it slow and gradual, it can create that sustainable change and make that sustainable
Yes.
impact that you
Yes.
want in your life.
And I'd much rather have somebody take longer and stick with it than doing something overnight and then realizing it was such a massive change
Hmm.
that they can't sustain it and then giving up completely.
Right.
And so I think one of the best things of vegan, if somebody decides to go vegan for animals, the best thing you can do is also be whole food plant-based for your health because if you're eating Oreos and potato chips and you know whatever other vegan junk foods out there, your body's not going to be able to sustain that a long time and then you're going to be another ex-vegan on the internet saying I was vegan and my health went down the tubes.
Right.
It's really that it takes time for that learning curve to happen
Hmm.
and for you to understand. how to get the different vitamins and nutrients that you're going to need, just like any other dietary pattern. Any diet change you make, there's a learning curve. So when people are like, oh, it's too hard to learn how to eat a plant-based diet, it was hard when I was learning Weight Watchers. It was hard when I was learning what I could eat doing Adkins. That was really hard because I was like, what the heck am I going to eat at that time?
Hmm.
So any change you make is going to take time. It's just the cool thing about this is each step you go, the better it gets, where it's not like there are some diets where you eat one thing out of alignment, like on a keto diet. If you eat one thing out of alignment, now you're out of ketosis and you've blown everything. With this, you just keep adding more plant foods and things get better and better. There's no blowing it.
Yeah, no, I love that. That is so great and such an important reminder. I feel like I could talk for you so much longer about all of this because it's, we're in alignment with a lot of this and our
So many
journeys are very
things. Yeah.
similar. Um,
Mhm.
Before we wrap up, what are some inspirational resources you'd like to recommend for people?
So my website is vegecooking.com. So it's vege-cooking.com. And so I've been writing a lot of articles and have a bunch of recipes, and my licensee still has all of the cooking class opportunities there. So if somebody is in South Georgia, Northeast Florida, and you want your kids to participate, she's running the cooking classes and is amazing with kids.
Nice.
Um, I also listen to the Plant Strong podcast. So, Plant Strong, who's the company that I'm working with for the wellness program, they have Rip Esselstyn has a great podcast. And in fact, if you would like to bring a plant-based wellness program to your company that is plant forward, totally non-judgmental, but really makes actual impacts, not like a check the box, like we have a wellness program that nobody participates in. This is like an actual real will change my life wellness program.
Mm,
Um, it is at, if you just Google Plant Strong Corporate Wellness Program, it should come up.
okay.
And then I can give you the link for that as well because they just added a page on their website for the corporate wellness program. So if anybody wants to bring their wellness program to the company, it would be amazing to bring to your HR people. I like the Exam Room podcast,
Mm,
and then which is the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. That is their podcast. And then finally, I love nutritionfacts.org, who is Dr. Greger's amazing website. So if you have a nutrition question, he has all the science on there and breaks it all down. Sometimes I don't get the answer I want, but at least I know it's legitimate science that is broken down in a way
hmm.
that I can understand. So I really do love his website.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm listening to the audiobook of How Not to Die, which
Yes.
is, was like, I don't know how I'm gonna enjoy listening to a medical book, even though it's something that
Yeah.
and it's not boring at
Yeah.
all. And
He is
just
pretty bright. Yeah.
his energy and some of the humor he brings to, he's just really great to listen to. I've
Mhm.
been listening to him literally all day or just like on my little
Yeah.
trips as I've been listening to the book. And yeah, those are really great recommendations. And yeah, when you get a chance, send me the links and I'll include them all in
Yeah.
the notes below this video
Cool.
so everyone else can watch. And before we wrap up, is there any other way that people can get in touch with you? Is there an email or?
I am on Instagram and Facebook under
Okay.
Veggie Cooking Club. So it's VEGE Cooking Club. And I've been shifting my Instagram and Facebook a little bit more towards also, I'm working on getting my personal training certification as well. So I'm going to be adding more exercise information on there. So I'm sort of starting to transition with that because my daughter's getting older and, now that I'm in my late 40s, that's becoming more interesting to me. And I know a lot of women are interested in that. So I'm starting to focus on that as well as the healthy plant-based cooking.
Great.
Yeah.
I will include all those links below the notes below. So everyone watching, you can connect with Dawn. You can connect with all those other amazing resources. And yeah, Dawn, thank you again for spending time out of your busy schedule to have this conversation with me. And thank you all for watching. And I'll see you all real soon. Bye for now.
Hi, thank you.